Alexander "Alex" Montgomery sits in his father's Ferrari, staring at his fifth failed exam. The paper trembles slightly in his hands, the bold red F seeming to grow larger by the second. Sweat beads on his forehead as he imagines his father's reaction. The ultimatum had been clear last time. One more failure, and everything would change. His phone buzzes with messages from friends planning the weekend party, oblivious to his predicament. Through the windshield, he notices movement in the supposedly empty school building. Curiosity momentarily displaces his panic as he watches Josephine Washington, the aging black janitor, writing complex equations on a whiteboard in an empty classroom. Her hand moves with confident precision, solving problems he recognizes from his advanced calculus class but had never understood. When she senses his presence and turns, their eyes lock through the window. Neither realizes this fleeting moment will transform everything, turning a privileged failure into something his father's billions could never buy. Alex lives in a $20 million mansion in Greenwich, Connecticut, with indoor and outdoor pools, a private movie theater, a bowling alley, and a garage housing 7 luxury vehicles. Westbrook Academy, the most prestigious private school in the Northeast, boasts a 98% Ivy League acceptance rate and tuition fees higher than most colleges. The Montgomery name appears on the school's main building, a constant reminder of his father's generous donations. Despite endless tutors, private lessons, and his father's connections, Alex fails repeatedly across all subjects. His mathematics teacher, Dr. Reynolds, writes detailed notes about Alex's disinterest during class, his incomplete homework, and his apparent belief that academic achievement is beneath him. His history teacher notes he seems incapable of remembering basic facts despite claiming to have studied. His English teacher observes he hasn't read a single assigned book all semester. His father, Richard Montgomery, founder and CEO of Montgomery Technologies, has threatened to withhold his inheritance and access to the family fortune unless his academic performance improves dramatically. Alex's mother, constantly traveling between their various international properties, remains a distant figure who sends expensive gifts instead of making appearances at school functions. The Montgomery mansion regularly hosts wild parties while Richard travels for business, attracting the wealthiest students from Westbrook and neighboring private schools. His inner circle consists exclusively of other wealthy white students. They occupy a specific lunch table where they loudly mock scholarship students, particularly those of color, making remarks about affirmative action and undeserved opportunities. One Monday morning, Alex and his friends stand near the entrance, rating female students as they walk in. When Marcus Williams, a black scholarship student and valedictorian candidate, passes by, Alex's friend Chase nudges him. "Check out the diversity pic," Chase sneers. Alex laughs, adding, "Special treatment. No way he earned his spot here on merit. Must be nice having lower standards." Marcus keeps walking, his shoulders tensing but his face carefully neutral, having learned long ago how to navigate these microaggressions. Later that day, Dr. Harrison, Alex's physics teacher, requests a meeting after his third failed test. In the empty classroom, Alex lounges in his chair, scrolling through his phone while Dr. Harrison reviews his performance. The conversation takes a tense turn when the teacher mentions possible summer school. Alex finally looks up, eyebrow raised. "Do you know how much my father donates to this school every year?" he asks, incredulously. "My family's name is literally on the building you teach in. Summer school seems like a failure of the faculty, not me." Dr. Harrison remains steady, explaining that donations cannot replace academic achievement. Alex scoffs and walks out, texting his father to call the school board. That evening, Richard returns early from a business trip, finding Alex by the pool with friends who quickly scatter at the billionaire's arrival. In Richard's home office, Alex sits across from his father, the massive mahogany desk between them feeling like a courtroom bench. "Alexander," his father says, using his full name as he always does when disappointed, "this is the third call I've received this month." He taps the screen of his tablet where Alex's grades are displayed. "You're 17 years old. Next year you'll be at Harvard, maintaining the Montgomery legacy." His voice is eerily calm, the kind of quiet that precedes catastrophic storms. Alex begins his usual excuses about unfair teachers and irrelevant material when Richard raises his hand, silencing him instantly. "I've spoken with the board. If you fail your finals, you'll be spending your summer at West Point Military Preparatory Program. No phone, no car, no access to your accounts. In September, if your attitude hasn't improved, you'll remain there instead of Harvard." Richard's eyes, identical in color to Alex's but lacking any warmth, bore into his son. "The Montgomery name means something, Alexander. Either you become worthy of it, or you forfeit its privileges." Alex sits frozen, realizing for the first time that his father's threats might not be empty. Josephine Washington rises at 4:30 each morning to begin her 2-hour commute to Westbrook Academy. She transfers between 2 buses and walks the final mile, arriving by 7 to prepare the building before students enter at 8. Her uniform, meticulously pressed despite its age, bears a small name tag that most never bother to read. For 20 years, she has maintained the prestigious academy, mopping floors that cost more per square foot than her entire apartment, cleaning classrooms where the children of America's elite prepare for futures of privilege. The students look through her as if she were invisible, sometimes deliberately dropping trash beside cans she has just emptied. The faculty treat her with distracted politeness, occasionally thanking her, but rarely remembering her name despite her long tenure. Only the other maintenance staff, mostly immigrants and people of color, acknowledge her fully as a person, sharing lunches and family stories in the small break room behind the cafeteria kitchen. What remains hidden from Westbrook Academy is Josephine's background. Her cramped apartment in a struggling neighborhood of Bridgeport contains bookshelves filled with advanced mathematical texts. Framed on her wall hangs a PhD diploma from MIT, alongside academic journal publications where Dr. Josephine Washington once made significant contributions to number theory and algebraic geometry. 22 years ago, she was a celebrated young professor at Howard University, her research attracting attention from major universities and technology companies. Her promising career collapsed when research she shared confidentially was published by Dr. William Harrington, a white colleague from a partnering institution who claimed her work as his own. When she fought back with evidence, Harrington used his connections to paint her as unstable and academically dishonest. The academic community, predisposed to believe him over her, blacklisted her from research positions. Her reputation destroyed, she eventually took the janitorial position at Westbrook, finding a certain peace in the honest work and using her salary to care for her mother, Eloise, whose advancing dementia requires constant attention. The school administration treats Jo with barely concealed condescension. Principal Lawrence Whitfield refers to her as our cleaning lady when introducing new faculty, emphasizing the "our" with subtle ownership. When she once suggested improvements to the recycling system, he patted her shoulder and said, "Let's leave the thinking to the educators, shall we? You just keep everything tidy." Jo maintains a cordial professionalism, knowing her mother's care depends on this job. Every evening after finishing her shift, Jo uses the empty classrooms to pursue her mathematical research, solving complex equations on whiteboards she carefully erases before morning. These stolen moments of intellectual engagement sustain her spirit through days of invisibility and dismissal. One evening, lost in the elegant patterns of an advanced topology problem, Jo doesn't hear the classroom door open. Alex Montgomery, returning to retrieve his forgotten phone, stands watching her solve equations his calculus teacher had presented as graduate-level work. The elegant precision of her work entrances him momentarily before confusion breaks the spell. "What are you doing?" he demands, startling Jo. She quickly begins erasing the board, but not before Alex takes a photo with his newly retrieved phone. "Are you copying answers to sell to students?" he asks, his mind unable to process that the janitor could understand such complex mathematics. Jo straightens to her full height, dignity evident in her posture despite her janitor's uniform. "No, Mr. Montgomery, I'm solving them." Her quiet confidence momentarily silences him, but Alex recovers quickly, his sense of superiority reasserting itself. He examines the partially erased board, recognition dawning that these solutions are far beyond what most students could produce. His upcoming finals hover in his mind, his father's threat of military school suddenly very real. A calculating look crosses his face. "I need to pass my finals," he states flatly. "You clearly know this stuff." His phone screen glows with the photo of her equations. I wonder what Principal Whitfield would think about the janitor using school property after hours for personal projects. The implication hangs in the air between them. Joe feels a familiar sinking sensation, recognizing again how quickly power can shift against her. "Help me pass my tests," Alex continues, "or I tell everyone you're vandalizing school property." After all, who would believe you could actually understand this stuff? The words sting with their casual cruelty and dismissal of her intellect. Joe grips her cleaning cart, knuckles whitening, 20 years of swallowed indignities rising in her throat like bile. Joe regards Alex with a steady gaze that makes him shift uncomfortably, despite his attempted bravado. "I will not help you cheat, Mr. Montgomery," she says with quiet firmness. The young man blinks, clearly unaccustomed to direct refusal, but she continues before he can protest. "I will, however, tutor you after school if you genuinely want to learn." Her offer comes with conditions. He must arrive promptly at 4:30, complete all assigned work beforehand, and address her respectfully as Miss Washington. Alex scoffs but agrees, his desperation outweighing his disdain. The next afternoon, Joe waits in the empty classroom, materials carefully prepared for their first session. The minute hand of the clock moves steadily past their agreed starting time. At 4:55, Alex saunters in, designer backpack slung casually over one shoulder. "Sorry," he says, without sounding sorry at all. "Coach wanted to talk about the lacrosse team for next season." He drops into a chair, immediately pulling out his phone and beginning to scroll through social media. Joe stands silently until he eventually looks up with an impatient sigh. "Are we going to start, or what?" he asks. "Miss Washington," she corrects him mildly. Alex rolls his eyes. "Miss Washington," he repeats with exaggerated politeness. "Whatever. Can we hurry this up? I have plans tonight." Joe places a preliminary assessment on his desk. Alex stares at it, then back at her. "Seriously? I'm not taking a test. You're supposed to be helping me." "It's not a test," Joe explains. "It's to help me understand what concepts you know and which ones need work. Just try your best." Alex makes a show of suffering through the assessment, completing it in 10 minutes, though it should take 30, then pushes it toward her. "There. Now teach me how to pass the final." Joe reviews his work, noting he hasn't attempted most problems, and those he tried show fundamental misunderstandings of basic concepts. She begins explaining prerequisite material, but Alex interrupts repeatedly. "This is boring," he complains. "Just show me the shortcuts. Just tell me what will be on the test." When she explains there are no shortcuts to genuine understanding, he groans dramatically. "Look," he says, checking his expensive watch, "no offense, but you're the help. I don't need your life philosophy. Just help me pass so my father doesn't ship me off to military school." Joe calmly closes her teaching materials and places them in her bag. "What are you doing?" Alex demands. "I'm leaving, Mr. Montgomery," she responds evenly. "I won't waste my time teaching someone who isn't willing to learn. I said I would tutor you, not perform miracles. Have a good evening." She walks out, leaving Alex staring after her in disbelief. That evening, dark clouds gather as Joe stands at the bus stop, the first heavy raindrops beginning to fall. She opens her umbrella just as she hears someone calling her name. Alex runs toward her, his designer clothes already soaking in the sudden downpour. The bus arrives, and Joe boards without acknowledging him. To her surprise, he follows, dropping coins into the fare box and trailing her to a seat near the back. "Miss Washington, please," he says, water dripping from his hair. "I need your help. I'm sorry about earlier." His desperation seems genuine, fear replacing his usual arrogance. Joe studies him for a long moment before nodding once. "Be at the classroom tomorrow at 4:30, prepared to work." Relief washes over his face as he settles into the seat beside her. As the bus travels from the manicured lawns of Greenwich toward Bridgeport, the neighborhoods change dramatically. Alex stares through the window at scenes he has only seen in news reports. Apartment buildings with broken windows, corner stores with bulletproof glass, groups of young men huddled under awnings to escape the rain. Joe watches his expression shift from curiosity to discomfort. "Your stop is coming up, right?" he asks hopefully. Joe shakes her head. 10 more stops. "I live in Bridgeport." Alex tries to hide his surprise. "Oh, cool." He attempts nonchalance but fails. When they finally exit the bus, the rain has intensified. They walk quickly through streets, nothing like the pristine avenues of Alex's neighborhood. He flinches at a distant siren, earning a small, knowing smile from Joe. "Afraid?" she asks. He straightens, pride overriding honesty. "No, of course not." Her modest apartment building stands between a pawn shop and a convenience store with bars on its windows. Inside, the narrow hallway smells of cooking and disinfectant. When Joe unlocks her door, they hear a crash from inside. "Mom?" Joe calls out, rushing in with Alex awkwardly following. In the small living room, an elderly woman stands disoriented amid shattered glass, a toppled side table at her feet. "Mom, what happened?" "Are you hurt?" Joe asks, carefully approaching her. The woman looks at Joe with confusion. "I was looking for my keys, Josie. I need to pick you up from school." Her voice trembles with agitation. The time swims in Eloise Washington's mind, decades shifting without warning. Joe gently leads her mother to sit on the worn couch, checking her hands and feet for cuts. Alex stands frozen by the door, witnessing this intimate moment of care and concern. As Joe calms her mother, Eloise suddenly clutches her chest, her breathing becoming labored. "Mom?" Joe asks, alarm rising in her voice. Eloise doesn't respond, her face contorting with pain. "Call 911, Joe instructs Alex sharply. He fumbles for his phone, dialing quickly. Joe speaks clearly to the dispatcher, but tension lines her face. When she gives the address, the dispatcher asks her to repeat it, then informs her the wait time for an ambulance could be 45 minutes due to high call volume in the area. "They're triaging calls," Joe explains to Alex, frustration and fear evident in her voice. In this neighborhood, police often arrive before ambulances, and sometimes no medical help comes at all. Alex watches Joe hold her mother's hand, whispering reassurances while clearly terrified herself. He thinks of his father, always able to summon immediate assistance with a single call. Without fully considering his actions, Alex dials another number. "Dad," he says when Richard answers, "I need Dr. Peterson's private number." Now, surprised by his son's tone, Richard provides the information without the usual interrogation. Minutes later, Alex speaks rapidly to his father's personal physician, explaining the situation and providing the address. Within 15 minutes, a private medical service arrives. EMTs quickly assessing and stabilizing Eloise before transporting her to the nearest hospital. Joe rides in the ambulance, Alex following in an Uber he orders. At the hospital, Alex uses his father's name to ensure Eloise receives immediate attention. Hours later, with Eloise diagnosed with angina and resting comfortably, Joe and Alex sit in the waiting room, styrofoam cups of terrible coffee cooling in their hands. "Thank you," Joe says quietly, her usual composure cracked by exhaustion and relief. Alex shrugs uncomfortably, unused to sincere gratitude. "It's nothing. My dad has people everywhere." Joe studies him thoughtfully. "Not nothing, Mr. Montgomery. Something." For the first time, she sees beyond his privilege to the person who might exist beneath it. And for the first time, Alex receives a look containing neither deference nor disdain, but simple human recognition. The following week, tutoring begins in earnest. Joe arrives prepared with structured lessons designed to address the fundamental gaps in Alex's understanding. She starts with basic algebraic principles, explaining how they underpin the more complex calculus concepts that confound him. Alex slouches in his chair, performing his usual ritual of checking his phone and making dismissive comments. "I already know all this," he complains when Joe explains polynomial functions. "This is like 8th grade stuff." Joe remains patient. "If you already know it, Mr. Montgomery, perhaps you could solve this problem?" She writes an equation that combines several concepts. Alex stares at it, reluctance giving way to frustration as he realizes he cannot solve what he claims to understand. Jo never mocks his ignorance or reminds him of his earlier boasting. Instead, she systematically rebuilds his mathematical foundation, connecting abstract concepts to concrete examples. Though initially resistant, Alex gradually engages with the material. When Jo explains how calculus principles apply to the physics of racing cars, determining optimal speeds for different curve radii, he shows his first genuine interest. "Wait, so I could use this to figure out the fastest line through a turn?" he asks, thinking of the racing games he plays. Jo nods, seizing on his interest to deepen his understanding. By the session's end, Alex has solved several problems correctly, the unfamiliar sense of academic accomplishment both confusing and surprisingly satisfying. The next day, Jo notices Principal Whitfield watching through the classroom window during their session. Afterward, he calls her into his office. "Miss Principal Whitfield Washington," he begins, leaning back in his leather chair. "I've noticed you've been spending time with Alexander Montgomery after school hours." His tone suggests impropriety. "May I ask what you're doing?" Jo explains the tutoring arrangement calmly. Whitfield frowns, tapping his expensive pen against his desk. "While I appreciate your initiative," he says carefully, "we need to remember appropriate boundaries. Alexander comes from one of our most important families. If he's struggling academically, we have qualified faculty who can assist him." Jo meets his gaze steadily. "Mr. Montgomery specifically requested my help, sir. I'd be happy to stop if you or his father would prefer it." Whitfield studies her, weighing the situation. "Very well," he finally says. "You may continue for now, but remember your position here, Miss Washington." His emphasis on your position carries clear implications about her place in the school's hierarchy. The tutoring continues daily, and Alex's understanding gradually improves. He begins completing the homework Jo assigns, his solutions showing increasing comprehension. During school hours, however, nothing changes in his social behavior. When passing Jo in the hallway while with his friends, he looks through her as if she doesn't exist. One afternoon, as Jo cleans near the student lounge, she overhears Chase and another of Alex's friends mocking her. "Dude, what's with the cleaning lady following you around?" Chase asks. Alex laughs dismissively. "My dad made me get a tutor. Can you believe he thinks the janitor can help me pass? They probably couldn't find anyone else willing to deal with you," another friend jokes. "Probably pays her extra to handle your entitled ass." The group laughs, and Alex joins in, adding, "She probably needs the money. You should see where she lives. It's like a third-world country over there." Jo continues her work, face impassive despite the sting of his words, having long ago learned to armor herself against such casual cruelty. Later that week, Alex arrives at the classroom to find Marcus Williams sitting in his usual seat, speaking with Jo about advanced mathematical concepts far beyond the curriculum. When Marcus sees Alex, his expression hardens. He thanks Jo for her insights and gathers his materials. "Miss Washington, your explanation makes perfect sense." "I'm grateful for your time," he says respectfully before exiting, deliberately brushing past Alex without acknowledgement. "What was that about?" Alex asks, dropping into the newly vacated seat. Jo begins setting up their lesson materials. "Marcus had some questions about multivariable calculus for his advanced placement exam," she explains. "Advanced placement?" Alex repeats skeptically. "Right, special accommodations for diversity picks." Jo stops arranging papers and fixes him with a direct stare. "Marcus Williams has the highest standardized test scores in Westbrook's history, Mr. Montgomery. He taught himself calculus in 9th grade using library books because his previous school couldn't afford advanced mathematics courses. Despite working 20 hours weekly to help support his family, he maintains perfect grades and leads 3 student organizations. She lets this information settle between them. The only special accommodation he receives is having to work twice as hard to be taken half as seriously by people like you." Alex shifts uncomfortably, unused to such direct confrontation. "Whatever," he mumbles, pulling out his textbook to change the subject. Their session proceeds as usual, but later, As Alex solves practice problems independently, Joe notices him glancing repeatedly at the door where Marcus exited. The following day after their session, Alex heads toward the parking lot where his friends wait. Marcus approaches from the opposite direction, carrying a stack of books. Chase sticks out his foot, sending Marcus and his books sprawling across the pavement. The group laughs, Chase making a theatrical apology dripping with insincerity. "Look at all those advanced books," he mocks. "Trying so hard to prove you belong here." Alex watches, the familiar script playing out as it has countless times before. But something shifts in his perception, Joss' words echoing in his mind. Instead of joining in the laughter, he stands frozen, seeing the scene through new eyes. Marcus gathers his books with dignity, ignoring the taunts with practiced restraint. When he walks away, Alex finds himself wondering about the strength required to endure such treatment daily, a kind of strength he has never needed to develop. Later that evening, Marcus approaches Alex in the library where he studies alone, preparing for the next tutoring session. "I know what you're doing," Marcus says without preamble. Alex looks up, confusion crossing his face. "What are you talking about?" "Taking advantage of Miss Washington," Marcus clarifies, his voice low but intense. "She's helping you because that's who she is. She sees potential in everyone, even people who don't deserve it. But I see you ignoring her in the hallways, laughing with your friends at her expense, then showing up for help when you need it." Alex feels an unfamiliar flush of shame, but defaults to defensiveness. "You don't know anything about it. It's just tutoring." Marcus leans closer. "No, it's hypocrisy. You use her knowledge while treating her as invisible. You take what she offers while giving nothing in return, not even basic respect." He straightens, gathering his books. "People like you always take from people like her, thinking it's your right. But one day, you'll need something money can't buy, and you won't understand why no one wants to give it to you." Marcus walks away, leaving Alex with an uncomfortable weight in his chest, a feeling that resembles guilt but remains unrecognizable to someone who has rarely had cause to experience it. As weeks pass, Alex's academic performance shows marked improvement. He correctly answers questions in class, surprising his teachers and classmates alike. However, his social behavior remains largely unchanged. He still sits with the same exclusive group at lunch, still drives his expensive car to school, still attends weekend parties where the guest lists include only the wealthiest students. Joe recognizes that his education remains incomplete despite his intellectual progress. After a particularly successful tutoring session where Alex masters differentiation concepts, Joe makes an unexpected suggestion. "Tomorrow," she says while gathering her materials, "we should change locations." Alex looks up from his phone, confusion crossing his face. "Why?" "This classroom works fine." Joe continues packing methodically. "Mathematics exists beyond classroom walls, Mr. Montgomery. I volunteer at a community center in Bridgeport on Thursdays. If you're serious about understanding practical applications, you should see how these concepts function in the real world." Alex immediately begins making excuses, but Joe remains firm. 6 o'clock tomorrow. "I'll text you the address. It's entirely optional, of course, but I believe it would be valuable." She leaves him sitting alone with his reluctance and privilege. The following evening, after much internal debate, Alex finds himself driving his father's BMW slowly through unfamiliar streets, the navigation system warning him he has entered a high-crime area. The community center stands between a discount grocery store and a pawn shop, its faded sign reading Bridgeport Community Education Center. Inside, the contrast with Westbrook Academy couldn't be more stark. Where his school boasts marble floors and mahogany paneling, the center makes do with linoleum and cinder-block walls brightened by student artwork. Joe works with a group of middle and high school students gathered around tables pieced together from mismatched parts. When she spots Alex hovering uncertainly in the doorway, she waves him over. "Everyone, this is Alexander," she announces to the group. "Hess joining us today to see our engineering project." The students regard him with curious but not unfriendly glances. A girl about 14 raises her hand. "Is that a Rolex Daytona?" she asks, eyeing his watch. Alex nods, surprised by her knowledge. "How did you know?" The girl shrugs. My mom cleans houses for a collector in Fairfield. She has to memorize the catalog to know how to handle each one. Yours costs more than her annual salary. The matter-of-fact statement leaves Alex momentarily speechless. Joe smoothly redirects the conversation, explaining that the group is designing a rainwater collection and filtration system for the community garden behind the center. Using principles of fluid dynamics, calculus for optimizing collection, and chemistry for filtration, the students work collaboratively to solve real problems affecting their community. Despite himself, Alex becomes drawn into the project. He works alongside Darius Washington, Josh's 16-year-old nephew, whose quick intelligence and intuitive grasp of mathematical concepts immediately impress him. As they calculate flow rates together, Alex realizes that the equations Joe taught him directly apply to this practical challenge. For 3 hours, he forgets about his designer clothes and expensive watch, absorbed in meaningful work with peers who care nothing for his family name or wealth. When they take a break for pizza, Alex learns about the students' lives. Many attend underfunded public schools, where advanced classes have been eliminated due to budget cuts. Some work part-time jobs to help their families with basic expenses. Yet they voluntarily spend evenings at the community center, hungry for educational opportunities. Diana, the girl who recognized his watch, explains that she wants to study engineering at MIT, but worries about the cost, despite her excellent grades. When I look at admission statistics, she says, while sketching a design modification, less than 2% of their engineering students come from backgrounds like mine. The application fee alone is almost a week of my mom's pay. Alex thinks of his Harvard legacy admission, practically guaranteed by his family name regardless of his grades. He remembers complaining about writing the personal essay, which his father's assistant ultimately ghostwrote for him. The evening continues, with Darius explaining a mathematical shortcut he's discovered for their calculations. Alex watches Josh's nephew work through complex equations with ease, recognizing a natural talent that far exceeds his own despite their enormous gap in educational resources. While Alex had private tutors since childhood, Darius taught himself using borrowed textbooks and free online videos, often working by the light of his phone when electricity was unreliable. As the session ends, Alex feels an unfamiliar sense of accomplishment, untethered from external validation or fear of his father's disapproval. Joe invites him to return the following week, and he finds himself agreeing without hesitation. For the next month, Alex divides his time between tutoring sessions with Joe and Thursday evenings at the community center. He begins bringing materials the center needs, purchased with his own money rather than asking his father. His understanding of mathematics deepens through teaching concepts to younger students, discovering that explaining ideas to others reveals his own knowledge gaps. His friendship with Darius grows, based on shared intellectual interests rather than social status. One Thursday in late April, Alex arrives at the center to find the atmosphere subdued. Darius is absent, and when he asks Joe about it, her expression grows troubled. Hess considering dropping out of school, she explains quietly. He got a full-time job offer at the warehouse where he works weekends. His mother needs surgery, and the family has no insurance. Alex struggles to process this information. But he's brilliant, he protests. He could get a scholarship to any university. Joe regards him with a look that has become familiar, a mixture of patience and challenge. With what preparation? She asks. His school has no advanced placement courses, no college counselor, no SAT preparation. Those cost money, Mr. Montgomery. Money his family doesn't have. But surely there's some program, some scholarship, Alex begins. The certainty of his privileged worldview beginning to crack. Joe nods. There are some, yes. Highly competitive, with thousands of applicants for a handful of spots. Meanwhile, Darius' mother needs surgery now, not after some potential future scholarship might materialize. Alex falls silent, confronting the immediate reality of choices made without the safety net his wealth has always provided. After the session, Alex drives home slowly, his thoughts troubled by this new understanding of how opportunity operates outside his protected sphere. The following week, Darius returns to the community center, now attending only occasionally due to his work schedule. He and Alex work together on a particularly challenging aspect of the filtration system. As they finish, Alex notices his watch is missing from his wrist. He checks his pockets, the table, the floor, growing increasingly frantic. Darius watches his search with concern. "Everything okay?" he asks. "My watch," Alex explains, trying to keep accusation from his voice while his mind races with assumptions. "I had it earlier, and now it's gone." The room falls silent as everyone becomes aware of the situation. Alex feels eyes on him, reading the suspicion he tries to hide. Diana approaches, her expression guarded. "Are you saying someone took it?" she asks directly. Alex hesitates. "I don't know. It was expensive, really expensive." His eyes drift involuntarily toward Darius, whose face hardens in recognition of the unspoken accusation. "I see," Darius says quietly, standing and gathering his belongings. Same old story. White kid loses something around black kids, and suddenly we're all suspects. "Thanks for the vote of confidence." He walks out, dignity intact but shoulders rigid with familiar pain. Jo approaches Alex, disappointment evident in her expression. "I expected better from you," she says simply. The room remains uncomfortably silent as Alex continues searching, shame-building with each passing minute. When he finally checks his backpack for the third time, he finds the watch caught in an inner pocket, having slipped off his wrist while he was retrieving his calculator. His relief quickly sours as he realizes what is done, the assumptions he made without evidence, the harm caused by his ingrained prejudice. He holds up the watch, words of apology dying on his lips as he confronts the ugliness of his automatic suspicion. The following day, Alex drives to Darius' neighborhood, information obtained from a reluctant Jo. He finds the apartment building easily enough, but hesitates before approaching, recognizing the magnitude of his mistake and unsure how to make amends. A neighbor informs him that Darius isn't home, having taken an extra shift at the warehouse. After getting directions, Alex drives to the industrial area where the warehouse stands. He waits outside for 2 hours until Darius' shift ends, rehearsing apologies that seem increasingly inadequate. When Darius finally emerges, his surprise at seeing Alex quickly hardens into wariness. "What do you want?" he asks, keeping his distance. "I found my watch," Alex says, launching directly into his rehearsed apology. "It was in my bag the whole time. I'm sorry for what I assumed. I was wrong." Darius studies him for a long moment, weighing his sincerity. "It happens more than you'd think," he finally says. "Last month, a woman at the pharmacy accused me of stealing her wallet. Security detained me, searched me, made me empty my pockets. She found it in her car later. Never apologized." His voice remains steady, factual rather than accusatory. 2 months before that, I got fired from my job at the electronics store when a laptop went missing during my shift. They found it later, misplaced by the manager. Still didn't get my job back. Said it was for the best, since customers might feel uncomfortable. Alex listens, truly hearing for the first time the reality of living with such constant suspicion. "I don't know what to say," he admits. Darius shrugs. "Most people don't. Listen, I gotta go. I'm starting my second job in 30 minutes. Alex watches him walk away, understanding that his single apology changes nothing about the systems that shaped his assumptions, or the countless times Darius has faced similar situations without any acknowledgement of wrongdoing. The weight of this realization follows him home, where his father's Ferrari and Bentley sit in the circular driveway like physical manifestations of his unearned advantages. Alex's increasingly consistent academic improvement catches his father's attention. Richard Montgomery, between international business trips, notices his son's grades rising from D's and F's to solid B's, with occasional A's on recent assessments. One Monday evening, Richard summons Alex to his home office, where he reviews the latest school reports on his tablet. "You've made progress, Alexander," he acknowledges, rare approval in his tone. Alex straightens in his chair, accustomed to criticism rather than praise from his father. "Your physics and mathematics improvements are particularly notable." His father studies him with newfound interest. "How have you accomplished this?" Alex hesitates, uncertain how his father will react to the truth. "I've been getting help," he finally admits. "A tutor." Richard nods approvingly. Excellent initiative. One of the faculty, I assume? Dr. Reynolds, perhaps? Alex shifts uncomfortably. Actually, it's Miss Washington. Richard frowns, the name unfamiliar. She's, one of the janitorial staff, Alex explains, watching his father's expression transform from confusion to disbelief. You're being tutored by a janitor? Richard clarifies, his tone suggesting Alex has admitted to something absurd. When Alex confirms this, explaining Joe's help over the past months, Richard falls silent, studying his son with a calculating gaze that has intimidated business competitors for decades. The next day, Richard arrives at Westbrook Academy unannounced, his expensive suit and commanding presence causing immediate deference from faculty and administration. He observes one of Alex's classes from the back, noting his son's improved participation, then requests a meeting with Principal Whitfield. Their conversation behind closed doors lasts 30 minutes, after which both men walk purposefully through the hallways toward the maintenance area. They find Joe cleaning windows in an empty classroom, her methodical movements interrupted by Richard's direct approach. Miss Washington. He begins without introduction. I understand you've been tutoring my son. Joe turns calmly, recognizing him immediately, though they've never met. His resemblance to Alex is striking, though the father's features are hardened by decades of wielding power. Yes, Mr. Montgomery, she confirms. Alexander has been working very diligently. For the first time, Principal Whitfield notices a subtle accent in her speech, the careful enunciation of someone who once moved in academic circles before circumstances altered her path. Richard studies her with the same assessing gaze he uses for potential acquisitions. I'd like to properly compensate you for your time, he states, removing his checkbook from his jacket. Would $10,000 be appropriate for continued lessons through the end of the semester? The amount is presented not as generosity, but as a business transaction, a problem solved with money. Joe regards the checkbook without reaching for it. That won't be necessary, Mr. Montgomery. I'm not tutoring Alexander for compensation. Richard's eyes narrow slightly, suspicion replacing certainty. Why then? He asks directly. Joe continues her work, wiping the window in careful circles. Because he asked for help, she answers simply. And because everyone deserves an education, regardless of their starting point. This response only deepens Richard's suspicion. He replaces his checkbook and instead removes his phone, stepping aside to make a call while Whitfield watches nervously. 20 minutes later, Richard returns to where Joe still works, his expression now differently focused. Dr. Josephine Washington, he says, emphasizing the title she hasn't used in decades. Ph.D. in mathematics from MIT, former associate professor at Howard University, author of 7 peer-reviewed papers on algebraic topology. He watches her carefully, noting how her movements pause almost imperceptibly before continuing. Then you resigned under unusual circumstances. His tone makes the statement a question. Joe meets his gaze directly. I was forced to resign after false accusations of academic dishonesty. She maintains her dignity despite the painful memory. Accusations later proven false, but not before my reputation was destroyed. Richard processes this information with the efficiency that built his business empire. And you chose to become a janitor? He asks, genuine confusion in his tone. Joe smiles slightly. I chose to survive, Mr. Montgomery, and to continue learning and teaching, even if not in the way I had planned. Her answer contains neither self-pity nor resentment, merely a statement of fact. Richard studies her with new interest, reassessing her from curiosity to potential threat. What exactly is your interest in my son, Dr. Washington? He asks directly. Joe sets down her cleaning supplies and faces him fully. The same as with any student, to help him learn not just the material, but how to think for himself, rigorously and honestly. Richard considers this, suspicion lingering in his expression. I'll be looking into your background more thoroughly, he informs her, the implied threat clear in his tone. Please do, Joe replies calmly. You'll find the truth was documented, though too late to salvage my academic career. Principal Whitfield, uncomfortable with the tension, attempts to intervene, suggesting they continue the conversation in his office. Richard ignores him, still focused entirely on Joe. He promises to continue their discussion later and exits with the same commanding presence with which he arrived, leaving Whitfield to make awkward apologies before hurrying after him. That evening, Alex returns home to find his father in his study, surrounded by digital displays showing articles and documents related to Joe. Richard turns when Alex enters, his expression unreadable. "You never mentioned your tutor was formerly an accomplished mathematician," he states. Alex, surprised by this information, admits he didn't know Jo's background. Richard gestures to the displays. "I had my team investigate her history. She's not who she appears to be." Alex feels a surge of protectiveness toward Jo. "She's exactly who she appears to be," he counters. "Someone who helps others even when they don't deserve it." Richard raises an eyebrow at his son's unexpected defense. "Careful, Alexander. She may have an agenda we don't yet understand." Alex scoffs, newfound confidence in his voice. "Yeah, the sinister agenda of teaching me calculus and making me work for something for once in my life." Richard studies his son with new eyes, noting changes beyond the improved grades. Before he can respond, his attention returns to a document on the main screen. "My team found something interesting," he says, enlarging the file. "Your Miss Washington applied for a research grant from the Montgomery Foundation 15 years ago. Her proposal was rejected in favor of Dr. William Harrington's competing project." He scrolls through additional documents. Harrington was later discovered to have plagiarized significant portions of his work from colleagues, including concepts suspiciously similar to Dr. Washington's original proposal. "Our foundation inadvertently contributed to her downfall by funding her rival." Richard speaks factually, without emotion, as if discussing a minor business miscalculation rather than a life derailed. Alex stares at the evidence, the full implications washing over him. "She knows, doesn't she?" he asks quietly. "Who my family is, what our foundation did." Richard nods. "Most likely. Yet she's helping you anyway." A note of reluctant respect enters his voice. The next day, Richard arranges to observe one of the tutoring sessions, arriving unannounced as Alex and Jo work through calculus problems. He sits silently in the back of the classroom, watching their interaction with the calculated neutrality that has served him in countless negotiations. Jo acknowledges his presence with a nod, but continues the lesson without alteration, maintaining focus on Alex's learning rather than performing for his powerful father. Richard observes his son's engagement with the material, noting how Jo builds connections between concepts rather than simply providing answers. When Alex successfully solves a complex problem independently, Richard sees genuine pride in his son's face, an expression he realizes he has rarely witnessed before. After the session, Richard approaches, his manner businesslike. "Dr. Washington," he begins formally, "I believe we have unfinished business to discuss." Jo begins gathering her materials. "I'm not interested in financial compensation, Mr. Montgomery," she reiterates. Richard's expression hardens. "I'm not offering money this time. I've contacted Principal Whitfield about your situation. Your continued employment here would constitute fraud, given the credentials you failed to disclose on your application." The implied threat hangs in the air. Alex, who had been packing his backpack, straightens abruptly. "What are you doing?" he demands, facing his father. Jo remains calm, though her hands still on the papers she was organizing. "I didn't list my PhD on a janitorial application because I was told I was overqualified," she explains quietly. "It wasn't fraud, merely survival." Richard remains unmoved. "Nevertheless, the board takes these matters seriously. Your position here is under review." "Dad, stop," Alex interjects, stepping between them. "She hasn't done anything wrong. You can't do this." Richard regards his son with surprise at this unprecedented defiance. "I can do whatever is necessary to protect our family's interests," he states firmly. "Miss Washington has been hiding her identity while gaining access to you. That raises serious concerns." Alex shakes his head in disbelief. "Access to me? She's helping me pass my classes, not kidnapping me. Why would someone with her qualifications choose to clean toilets unless she had no choice?" He looks at his father with new understanding. Unless someone powerful took that choice from her. Someone like you. The accusation lands heavily between them. Richard bristles, unaccustomed to challenge, especially from his son. You don't understand how the world works, Alexander. Sometimes hard decisions must be made. Business isn't always fair. It's not personal. Alex laughs without humor. It was personal to her, he counters, gesturing toward Joe. Your foundation funded the man who stole her research. Then everyone looked the other way when she lost everything. How is that not personal? Richard stares at his son, seeing him perhaps for the first time, not as an extension of himself, but as a separate person forming independent judgments. Joe interrupts this tense exchange, her dignity undimmed despite the threat to her livelihood. Mr. Montgomery, she says calmly, addressing Richard, your son has worked hard these past months. He has potential beyond what his grades previously suggested. Whatever you decide about my employment, please don't punish him for my past. Richard looks between them, recalculating his approach as he would in any complex negotiation. After a long moment, he nods once. Well, continue this discussion another time, he states, neither conceding nor pursuing the threat further. As he exits, Alex turns to Joe with apology written across his face. I'm so sorry, he begins. She shakes her head. You have nothing to apologize for, Mr. Montgomery. But she looks after Richard's departing figure with concern, recognizing the precarious position in which she now stands. The final week of the semester arrives, bringing mounting pressure as exams approach. Alex has improved significantly under Joss' guidance, but test anxiety threatens to undermine his progress. During their last tutoring session before finals, Joe notices his increasing agitation as he makes careless errors on practice problems. Take a deep breath, she instructs, demonstrating the technique herself. Alex complies reluctantly, then immediately returns to frantically solving equations. Joe gently covers the paper with her hand. Mathematics is not merely about finding answers, she explains. It's about maintaining clarity of thought under pressure. She teaches him a simple meditation technique she used before defending her dissertation, focusing on breath and progressive muscle relaxation. Alex initially resists, embarrassed by what he considers New Age nonsense, but eventually attempts the practice. To his surprise, his racing thoughts quiet somewhat, allowing him to approach the next problem with greater focus. Beyond techniques for managing anxiety, Joe emphasizes a different perspective on education itself. These tests measure knowledge at a single moment in time, she tells him. They cannot measure your capacity for growth or your character. Alex frowns, confused. But I have to pass, he argues. My father will send me to military school if I don't. Joe nods in acknowledgement. Passing is important, yes. But why are you learning? For a grade or for your future self? Alex had never considered this question. All his life, education had been a series of hurdles to clear for external rewards or to avoid punishment. The concept of learning for intrinsic value or personal development feels foreign yet strangely compelling. Learning because. He begins, then pauses, genuinely reflecting. I guess learning because I want to understand how things work, and because I don't want to be useless. Joe smiles slightly at his honesty. Then the grade is just a byproduct, not the purpose, she suggests. Keep your focus on understanding, and the results will follow naturally. The night before his mathematics final, Alex studies in his bedroom surrounded by practice problems and formula sheets. His phone buzzes repeatedly with messages from his friends. Checking the group chat, he finds Chase has sent a photo of what appears to be the answer key for tomorrow's exam. Dude, we're SET, Chase texts. My cousin works in the office and snagged this while making copies. Easy A tomorrow. The other messages show excitement and relief from their circle of friends. Alex stares at the screen, conflicting emotions churning within him. 2 months ago, he would have grabbed this opportunity without hesitation. Now, he remembers Joss' patient guidance, the hours she spent helping him truly understand the material, her belief in his ability to succeed through honest effort. His father's threat of military school looms if he fails, yet using the stolen answers feels like betraying both Joe and himself. While Alex wrestles with this dilemma, Joe faces her own crossroads. She returns home from her shift to find a letter waiting from Howard University. Opening it with trembling hands, she reads an official invitation to return to the mathematics department as a full professor. The university has reviewed the evidence concerning the plagiarism scandal, acknowledging the injustice of her forced resignation. They offer reinstatement with tenure, back pay, and a formal apology. Jo's mother, having a rare moment of clarity, watches her daughter's expression shift from shock to vindication. "Is it good news, Josie?" she asks. Jo nods, tears gathering in her eyes. "Yes, Mom. Very good news." After 15 years of invisibility and struggle, the academic world has finally acknowledged the truth. Yet the timing creates a painful choice. Accepting the position would mean leaving Westbrook immediately, abandoning Alex before his final exams, and potentially before he has developed the self-sufficiency to maintain his progress. She sits at her small kitchen table, weighing her long-deferred dreams against her commitment to a student who has come to matter more than she anticipated. The next morning, students gather nervously outside the examination room. Alex stands apart from his usual group, avoiding eye contact with Chase and the others. "Mr. Montgomery," a voice calls softly. He turns to find Jo approaching, her janitor's uniform exchanged for simple but professional attire. "You look different," he observes, noting not just the clothing but a subtle shift in her bearing, as if some part of her has already begun transitioning back to her former identity. "I wanted to wish you luck," she says, though they both know luck has little to do with preparation. Alex glances toward his friends, who watch this exchange with poorly concealed disdain. Jo follows his gaze, understanding the social dynamics at play. "Remember what we practiced," she advises. "One problem at a time, one breath at a time. The exam will unfold at its own pace." She hesitates, then adds, "Whatever happens today, Mr. Montgomery, know that you've already succeeded in ways that cannot be measured on a test." Alex swallows hard, unaccustomed to such unconditional support. Before he can respond, Chase approaches, slinging an arm around Alex's shoulders. "Ready to ace this thing?" he asks with exaggerated confidence, shooting Jo a dismissive look. "Doctor, Adams is passing out the papers. Let's go." Jo steps back, her expression neutral. "Good luck, gentlemen," she says professionally before walking away, her posture straight despite the weight of Chase's contempt. Inside the examination room, students take their assigned seats. Dr. T. Adams distributes the test papers face down, instructing everyone to wait for the signal before beginning. Alex sits with his pencil poised, breathing steadily as Jo taught him. When Dr. Adams gives the command to begin, Alex turns his paper over and immediately notices something unexpected. The questions differ from those in the stolen answer key Chase shared. Glancing around, he sees confusion spreading across the faces of his friends as they make the same discovery. Dr. Adams moves to the front of the room. "I should mention," he announces casually, "that a dummy version of this exam was misplaced yesterday." He surveys the room with knowing eyes. "The version before you is the actual final. Please proceed." Panic ripples through certain sections of the classroom. Chase looks at Alex with alarm, their easy A evaporating. Alex, however, feels a surprising sense of relief. He takes a deep breath and begins working through the problems methodically, applying the techniques and understanding Jo helped him develop. The questions challenge him, but not beyond his preparation. Where once he would have given up at the first difficulty, now he perseveres, breaking complex problems into manageable components as Jo taught him. When he encounters a particularly difficult question, he hears Jo's voice in his mind. When stuck, return to fundamentals. What do you know for certain? Beginning from this foundation, he works his way forward step by step. By the time Dr. Adams calls for pencils down, Alex has completed every problem, uncertain of all his answers, but confident in his approach. As students file out, comparing notes and lamenting difficult sections, Alex notices Marcus watching him thoughtfully. "Good luck, Marcus says simply before walking away, leaving Alex to wonder if the words contain genuine goodwill or subtle challenge. That evening, Alex returns home to find a letter from Howard University on the kitchen counter, addressed to his father, but left conspicuously where Alex would see it. He recognizes the implications immediately. Joss' opportunity for redemption has arrived, the academic world finally acknowledging what Westbrook never fully appreciated. He feels conflicting emotions, happiness for her well-deserved recognition, guilt over his family's role in her past struggles, and selfish concern about losing the first teacher who believed in his potential. His thoughts are interrupted by his father's arrival. Richard stands in the doorway, observing his son with the letter in hand. She received an offer to return to academia, he states, matter-of-factly. Full professor with tenure. Alex nods, unsurprised by his father's knowledge of the situation. Will she take it? He asks. Richard moves to pour himself a drink, his movements deliberate. That's her decision, of course. But the board has decided not to pursue the matter of her credentials. She may continue at Westbrook if she chooses. The carefully neutral statement contains layers of meaning, revealing that Richard has intervened in some capacity, though whether from guilt, manipulation, or genuine respect remains unclear. What would you do? Alex asks unexpectedly. His father rarely discusses personal decisions, focusing instead on strategic advantage and measurable outcomes. Richard considers the question with unusual thoughtfulness. 15 years ago, I would have chosen vindication without hesitation, he admits. Now, he shrugs slightly. Power and recognition lose their savor without purpose behind them. Alex studies his father, glimpsing perhaps for the first time the man beneath the billionaire persona, someone capable of reflection and possibly even regret. The days following final exams bring tense anticipation as students await results. Alex occupies himself with volunteer work at the community center, partly to distract himself from worry about his grades, and partly because the environment has become genuinely meaningful to him. He works alongside Darius, their friendship cautiously rebuilt after the watch incident. While helping younger students with a science project, Alex notices Joss' absence. "She's not here today?" he asks Darius casually. The question earns him a knowing look. "She had an interview at Howard," Darius explains. "They want her back." His tone suggests pride mixed with resignation, the expectation of another loss in a life accustomed to people moving on. Alex absorbs this confirmation, unsure how to process his complicated feelings. Part of him rejoices at Joss' well-deserved opportunity, while another part selfishly wishes she would remain within the limited role where he first encountered her. He recognizes the entitlement in this latter impulse and attempts to quash it, focusing instead on helping a 10-year-old girl understand the water filtration system he's demonstrating. Later that evening, as Alex prepares to leave, Diana approaches him with uncharacteristic hesitation. "Is it true what Darius said?" she asks. "That your dad runs Montgomery Technologies?" When Alex confirms this, she straightens her shoulders, gathering courage. "Would your father consider offering internships to students from our community?" she asks directly. "We're smart and work hard, but we don't have connections to get our feet in the door." Alex, startled by the request, automatically begins with the polite deflection that privileged people often use when confronted with direct asks. He'll certainly mention it to him, but the selection process is very competitive. The words sound hollow even to his own ears, echoing the empty promises made by powerful people who never intend to disturb the status quo. Diana's expression reveals she recognizes this pattern all too well. "Right," she says flatly. "Thanks anyway." She turns to walk away, expecting nothing further, accustomed to doors remaining closed despite polite words. "Wait," Alex calls after her, a new resolution forming. "Give me your email. I'll make it happen. Not just mention it. Make it happen." The distinction matters, he realizes, understanding finally the difference between passive acknowledgement and active commitment. The next day, Alex receives a message from Joe, asking to meet at the community center rather than school. When he arrives, he finds her in the small office she uses for administrative tasks, surrounded by mathematics, textbooks, and student files. Her appearance has subtly transformed, her posture and expression reflecting her academic identity rather than the invisibility she cultivated as a janitor. "I wanted to let you know," she begins without preamble, "Howard University has offered me a position." Alex nods, unsurprised. "Darius mentioned you had an interview. Are you going to accept?" Joe regards him thoughtfully. "I've spent 15 years away from academia," she acknowledges. "During that time, I discovered different ways of teaching, different definitions of success." She gestures toward the community center around them. "This work has meaning that universities often overlook." Alex understands she stands at a crossroads between vindication and continued service. "What will you do?" he asks, echoing the question he posed to his father. Before she can answer, a notification sounds on Alex's phone. The school's online system has updated with final grades. His heart races as he navigates to the results page, conscious of Joe's presence as he faces this moment of truth. He stares at the screen, momentarily unable to process what he sees. "All B's," he reads aloud, "and an A in mathematics." He looks up at Joe, astonishment mingling with pride. "I passed everything. I actually understood it." Joe smiles, genuine pleasure in her expression. "You did the work, Mr. Montgomery." The results merely confirm what was already true. Alex scrolls through his grades again, pausing at the teacher's comments that accompany each entry. Dr. Adams notes his markedly improved understanding of core concepts. Dr. Reynolds mentions his increased participation and thoughtful questions. Even his English teacher, who had given up on him months ago, acknowledges his unexpected engagement with the final essay prompt. As the reality sinks in, Alex realizes he has accomplished something his father's money couldn't buy. For perhaps the first time in his life, he has earned his success through genuine effort rather than privilege or connection. His phone buzzes with messages from Chase and his other friends, their grades reflecting the consequences of relying on stolen answers that proved useless. While they face summer school and parental disapproval, Alex has navigated the challenge honestly and emerged successful. The irony doesn't escape him. This personal victory, however, remains overshadowed by the uncertainty of Joe's decision. "Will you stay?" he asks directly, the question containing layers of meaning beyond her employment at Westbrook. Joe considers him thoughtfully. "What happens after people like me have served their purpose for people like you, Mr. Montgomery?" she asks, instead of answering. The question cuts to the heart of the dynamic between them, the unequal power relationship that has defined their interaction despite their growing mutual respect. "It's something I've been thinking about," Alex admits. "After Marcus showed me what I was doing, taking what I needed from you while still treating you as less in public." His voice contains genuine regret as he confronts his behavior. Joe nods, acknowledging both his insight and its limitations. "Learning happens in stages," she observes. "Sometimes the most important lessons take the longest to fully absorb." Before Alex can respond, the community center door opens, revealing Principal Whitfield and Richard Montgomery. Their unexpected arrival transforms the atmosphere, power, and privilege suddenly filling the modest space. "Miss Washington," Whitfield begins formally, "the board has reviewed your situation." He glances uncomfortably at Richard before continuing. "In light of your unique qualifications, we've decided to offer you a teaching position. Mathematics department, full benefits, starting next semester." The offer, clearly orchestrated by Richard rather than genuine contrition from the institution, hangs in the air between them. Jo's expression reveals neither gratitude nor resentment, only thoughtful evaluation. "Thank you for the offer, Principal Whitfield," she responds with perfect composure. "I'll need time to consider it alongside my other options." Whitfield, unused to anything but eager acceptance from those in subordinate positions, blinks in surprise. Richard, more accustomed to complex negotiations, merely nods in acknowledgement of her response. As they prepare to leave, Richard pauses beside Alex. "Congratulations on your grades, son," he says, the words simple but their delivery suggesting a more complex emotional landscape beneath his controlled exterior. Alex thanks him with equal restraint, their relationship shifting in subtle but meaningful ways. After they depart, Jo turns to Alex with a small smile. "Your father is an interesting man," she observes neutrally. Alex laughs without much humor. "That's one word for him. Did you know he was going to offer you a teaching job?" Jo shakes her head. "No, though I suspected something might be coming." The Montgomery approach to problem-solving seems to involve grand gestures rather than quiet conversation. Her gentle teasing surprises Alex, who has rarely heard anyone speak of his father with such unguarded candor. As they prepare to leave the community center, a final visitor arrives. Marcus Williams enters, carrying a folder of papers and looking surprised to find Alex present. "Miss Washington," he begins, then corrects himself. "Dr. Washington, I wanted to show you my college acceptance letters." The momentary awkwardness gives way to celebration as Marcus reveals admissions to Princeton, Stanford, and MIT, all with substantial scholarships. After congratulating him warmly, Jo excuses herself to check on other students, leaving Marcus and Alex in uncomfortable proximity. "Congratulations," Alex offers sincerely. "That's impressive." Marcus regards him with measured evaluation. "Thanks. I see you passed your finals." Alex nods, uncertain how to navigate this tenuous connection between them. As the silence stretches, Marcus finally speaks again. "Did you know she helped me too?" he asks unexpectedly. "When I first came to Westbrook, I was drowning. Not academically, but in all the unwritten rules and expectations. The way wealth operates without ever naming itself." Jo appears in the doorway, but remains unnoticed by either young man. "She showed me how to navigate spaces that weren't built for people like me," Marcus continues. "And she did it while cleaning those same spaces, never once showing resentment or bitterness." Alex listens, understanding deepening with each word. "But there's something else you should know," Marcus adds, his expression serious. "She's been using most of her salary to fund scholarships for students from this community, through a foundation she created anonymously, including the scholarship that helped me attend Westbrook." The revelation stuns Alex into silence. While cleaning floors at a school she was qualified to teach in, Jo had channeled her limited resources toward creating opportunities for others. Marcus watches comprehension dawn across Alex's face. All those years being invisible, being treated as less than human by students like us, and she was quietly changing lives with whatever she had. What does that tell you about who really matters in this world? The question lingers between them as Marcus departs, leaving Alex with a profound reconsideration of value, contribution, and what constitutes a life well lived. Golden sunshine bathes the Westbrook Academy lawn as graduates in caps and gowns gather for the commencement ceremony. Alex, not graduating for another year, sits among the audience watching the proceedings with new perspectives. The stage gleams with polished wood and brass, flowers arranged in tasteful displays that probably cost more than a month's rent in Joss neighborhood. Principal Whitfield speaks at the podium about excellence and tradition, his words washing over the assembled families who nod in satisfied agreement that their investments in Westbrook have paid appropriate dividends. Alex notices his father seated in the reserved section for board members and major donors, Richard's expression revealing nothing of their complicated recent interactions. The valedictorian address falls to Marcus Williams, whose poised presence at the podium commands attention from even the most distracted audience members. His speech weaves together academic excellence and social responsibility, challenging his privileged classmates to consider their obligations to the broader world without ever crossing into accusation or bitterness. From his seat, Alex finds himself genuinely inspired rather than defensive, a marked change from his reaction to Marcus just months earlier. As the ceremony concludes, Richard Montgomery approaches the podium. The audience straightens in anticipation, the billionaire's rare public appearances always noteworthy. Principal Whitfield introduces him effusively as a visionary leader, generous benefactor, and parent whose commitment to education has transformed Westbrook Academy. Richard adjusts the microphone with practiced ease, his custom suit and commanding presence the physical embodiment of success as defined by their social circle. The Montgomery family is pleased to announce a significant donation toward the construction of the new Montgomery Science and Technology Center, he begins, his voice carrying confidently across the assembled crowd. The $10 million facility will feature state-of-the-art laboratories and research spaces designed to prepare Westbrook students for leadership in the innovation economy. Appreciative murmurs ripple through the audience at the extraordinary sum. Richard continues outlining the building's specifications and timetable, every detail reflecting the certainty of someone accustomed to reshaping physical reality through financial power. He concludes by inviting his son to join him at the podium to discuss how the next generation of Montgomerys views the future of education. The unexpected invitation catches Alex off guard. He makes his way to the stage with mounting anxiety, never having spoken at such a formal event. His father hands him the microphone with an encouraging nod that contains more warmth than Alex can remember receiving in years. "Ladies and gentlemen," Alex begins, his voice initially unsteady, "I'm honored to share this occasion with you, particularly with the graduating class who has shown such remarkable achievement." He glances at his prepared remarks, the safe platitudes his father's assistant drafted for him swimming before his eyes. The words suddenly seem hollow, disconnected from the transformative experiences of recent months. Folding the paper deliberately, he sets it aside. "I'd like to tell you a story," he says instead, his voice finding new strength. "A story about education, privilege, and invisible contributions." In the audience, Richard shifts slightly, the only indication of his surprise at this deviation from script. "Several months ago, I was failing every subject," Alex continues with unflinching honesty. "Despite all the advantages this institution offers, despite my family's resources, I couldn't pass basic exams. Not because I lacked capacity, but because I lacked purpose and perspective." He pauses, gathering courage for what comes next. "That changed because of one person, someone most of you have walked past 1,000 times without noticing. Josephine Washington, our janitor." In the back row, Jo sits quietly, having come to support Marcus and her other students from the community center. Her expression remains composed, as all heads turn searching for the unexpected subject of Alex's speech. "For 20 years, Dr. Washington has cleaned our classrooms," Alex continues. "What most of you don't know is that she holds a PhD in mathematics from MIT. She was once a respected professor whose career was destroyed by academic plagiarism and institutional bias." His eyes find his father, who meets his gaze steadily despite the public airing of uncomfortable truths. "What you also don't know is that my family's foundation inadvertently contributed to her downfall by funding her rival who stole her research." Richard's jaw tightens slightly, but he makes no move to interrupt, allowing his son to continue this unexpected direction. Despite this history, when she recognized a failing student who needed help, she offered her knowledge and time without resentment or conditions, Alex says, emotion now evident in his voice. "While cleaning our floors, she used her janitorial salary to anonymously fund scholarships for students from underserved communities." The revelation sends whispers through the audience, faces turning again to locate this extraordinary person among them. "What Dr. Washington taught me went far beyond calculus," Alex continues. "She taught me that true education isn't about maintaining privilege, but about developing the capacity to contribute meaningfully to the world. She showed me that character isn't determined by the opportunities you receive, but by what you do with them, especially when no one is watching." In the front row, Principal Whitfield shifts uncomfortably as the speech transforms the carefully orchestrated event into something unexpected and potentially disruptive. Alex notices his discomfort but continues undeterred. "Westbrook Academy prides itself on preparing leaders," he says. "But what kind of leaders are we becoming? Ones who perpetuate systems that assign value based on wealth and background? Or ones who recognize brilliance and integrity wherever they appear?" His question hangs in the air, challenging the fundamental assumptions of the institution and the social order it represents. "Today, I want to announce my decision to decline my admission to Harvard University," Alex states, causing gasps from the audience and a visible reaction from his father. "Instead, I will be attending Howard University, where I plan to study education policy and social justice. This decision reflects my belief that true leadership requires understanding perspectives beyond the privileged bubble where I've spent my entire life. The revelation stuns the assembled parents and administrators, representing a dramatic departure from expected Montgomery family tradition. My father has generously allowed me early access to my trust fund, Alex continues, his voice steady despite the tension now evident on Richard's face. With those resources, I am establishing the Dr. Josephine Washington Scholarship Foundation, dedicated to supporting students from underrepresented backgrounds in pursuing careers in mathematics and science. Richard stands abruptly, surprising everyone, but instead of interrupting, he begins to applaud. The gesture, coming from the most powerful person present, gives others permission to join. Soon the audience rises in a standing ovation, the response carrying complex emotions ranging from genuine admiration to the performative approval of those who follow power wherever it leads. In the back row, Joe remains seated, momentarily overwhelmed by this public acknowledgement after decades of invisibility. Marcus finds her there, taking the chair beside her and squeezing her hand in quiet solidarity. The applause continues as Alex searches the crowd for Joe, finally locating her composed figure. "Dr. Washington, would you join me?" he invites, extending his hand toward her. The audience parts as Joe makes her way forward, her dignified presence commanding respect that has nothing to do with wealth or status. When she reaches the stage, Alex steps aside, yielding the platform to someone whose voice deserves amplification. Joe approaches the microphone with the quiet confidence of someone who has survived being silenced. "Education is not a product to be purchased or a competition to be won," she begins, her voice clear and measured. "It is a transformative process that should be available to every mind capable of growth, which is to say, every mind." The audience listens with unprecedented attention to someone they had previously overlooked countless times. As she concludes her brief but powerful remarks, Richard approaches her, visible to everyone in attendance. "Dr. Washington," he says, loud enough for nearby rows to hear, "on behalf of the Montgomery Foundation, I would like to offer our formal apology for our role in the injustice you experienced." He extends his hand, a public gesture of accountability rare among the powerful. "Furthermore, I'd like to discuss establishing a research center under your direction at Howard University, focusing on creating educational pathways for underrepresented students in mathematics." The offer, clearly unplanned and genuine, reveals a capacity for growth that Alex had rarely witnessed in his father. Joe considers Richard's extended hand for a moment before accepting it, their handshake representing not forgiveness, but a commitment to repairing harm through substantive action rather than empty words. Later that afternoon, Alex helps Joe carry boxes from her janitorial closet to her car. The small space had contained her life for 20 years, the humble hub from which she had quietly influenced countless students while remaining largely unseen. "It's strange," Alex comments as they load the final box. "A month ago, I was failing everything. Now I'm going to Howard and helping launch a foundation." Joe smiles, the expression containing wisdom earned through difficult experiences. "Life rarely moves in straight lines, Mr. Montgomery. Growth happens in unexpected moments when we become willing to question our assumptions." They pause beside her car, the transition point between chapters for both of them. "Will you keep in touch?" Alex asks, suddenly aware of how much her guidance has come to matter to him. Joe regards him thoughtfully. "That depends on you," she answers honestly. "Our paths have crossed for a reason, but meaningful connection requires continued choice, not just convenient circumstance." Alex nods, understanding the truth in her words and the responsibility they place on him to demonstrate through actions that her investment has created lasting change. As they say goodbye, Richard approaches, having observed their interaction from a distance. He waits until Joe drives away before addressing his son. "That was quite a speech, Alexander," he says, his tone revealing complex emotions beneath the simple statement. Alex meets his father's gaze directly. "Was it true?" he challenges. Richard considers the question with unusual thoughtfulness. Yes, he finally admits, not comfortable or convenient, but true. They stand together in rare, authentic connection, both changed by recent events in ways neither fully comprehends yet. Alexander Richard says after a long moment, "You surprised me today." His voice contains something unfamiliar, something approaching respect rather than mere approval. "I underestimated you." Alex accepts this acknowledgement, recognizing it represents a significant shift in their relationship. They walk together toward the parking lot where the family driver waits with the Bentley. "Dad," Alex begins hesitantly, "I want to talk to you about internships for students from the community center." Richard raises an eyebrow, but nods, willing to listen. For the first time, Alex notices gray at his father's temples, a suggestion of mortality in someone he had always perceived as invincible. As they drive away from Westbrook Academy, the prestigious institution recedes in the rearview mirror, its imposing facade suddenly seeming smaller, less definitive than it once appeared. Alex thinks of Jo beginning her journey back to Howard University, of Marcus preparing for Princeton, of Darius still working double shifts to support his family. He thinks of Diana and her dream of MIT, of all the brilliant minds constrained by circumstances they didn't choose. The landscape of privilege and opportunity stretches before him, no longer a guaranteed inheritance but a system he now feels responsible for helping to transform. His father's phone rings, drawing Richard into an international business call, the familiar rhythm of power and commerce continuing despite the day's revelations. Alex looks out the window, seeing his reflection superimposed on the passing scenery, his face both familiar and different, changed, in ways visible only to those who look closely enough to notice transformation when it happens. Have you seen this remarkable story about billionaire heir Alexander Montgomery and the black janitor who changed everything? This journey through privilege, discrimination, and transformation reminds us that education isn't just about passing tests, but about becoming fully human. How might your perspective change if you looked beyond superficial judgments to see the brilliance in unexpected places? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. If this story touched your heart or challenged your thinking, please like this video, subscribe to our channel for more inspiring content, and share with someone who needs this message today. Thank you for witnessing this story of courage, integrity, and the power of seeing people for who they truly are rather than the positions they occupy. May we all have the wisdom to recognize truth and the courage to stand for it, regardless of the cost.